Welcome to the podcast that explores mysterious disappearances, bizarre worldly occurrences, strange phenomenon, and basically everything that's weird. Welcome to the podcast. Everything that's weird. I'm your host. I'm Anthony. This is Brandon. We're here with our researcher Mario. And tonight, we're trying to figure out if ancient civilizations had technologies either better or the same as what we have now. So, this is actually kind of a big deal because what's taught to us is that everybody has evolved. Everything evolves, right? So, like, civilization evolved, societies evolved, technology evolved. However, archaeologists are like, hey, maybe not so fast.
Right.
Plato talked about, an advanced civilization that had like modern rules, and it was Atlantis was on the precipice of technology. They were like the best, and I don't know the exact story of Atlantis, but I guess it sank into the sea.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I know. Whatever. Doesn't matter. The point is,
I know that's where Aquaman lives, right?
Right, he does. The point is,
they got some pretty cool technology.
Is that when they go back and they start to look, and we kind of got into this. Mario, what's that book called?
The Lost Star of Missing Time.
The Lost Star of Missing Time. So, in that book, they talk a lot about anomalies in archaeology.
Yeah.
So archaeologists will be looking at, like, they'll be digging in a certain thing and they'll hit a coal vein, and there might be, a watch or modern, a cell phone,
modern tool in there.
Right.
Which has been claimed to be found.
Right.
Several times.
But I don't think we're really talking about that. I think what we're really talking about is that
did a civilization grow to somewhere near us or more advanced than us, and then either die off or maybe even leave the planet,
or became dumber?
Or just got dumb.
like idiocracy, right? Which, if you haven't watched Idiocracy,
shut up,
you need to go away. I'm baiting.
Yeah, it was actually
a documentary.
Yes, a documentary about current events.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
Yeah.
So that movie, just a real quick fun fact. The costume designer, she didn't have a big budget, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, hey, I was thinking, we'll do it. This is an easy way. We'll just take, all the everybody that wants to pay to have their company put in the film.
Yeah.
We'll put it on their clothes. And he's like, oh, that's genius. He's like, that's actually pretty genius. He's like, all right, what about the shoes? I was like, so that took care. So, like, Carl's Jr. paid to be in the movie, like all these people, right? And then she's like,
I don't think Starbucks wanted to be represented like that. But yeah.
So she's like, there's this startup shoe company, and there's no way it's gonna like go forward. They're these dumbass shoes. She's like, but like, we could probably get the rights for like nothing. And he's like, all right, do it. And Mike Judge, he's hysterical if you ever listen to him.
Yeah.
So he's like, all right, do it. It was Crocs.
Yeah. Yep. They're
So
like, these are the dumbest shoes ever.
Yeah.
These are perfect for this show. They are stupid.
But I think what we're really talking about is like, it was a joke from Joe Rogan that really messed with me.
Yeah.
I never thought about it. But he said, I think the ancient Egyptians came across the pyramids and said, we built these.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's crazy about that. There's several different archaeology sites on that plateau, on the Giza plateau, right?
Yeah.
That it's crazy how far they predate the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have hieroglyphics.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually don't know what they do. Some of them, they think they're wells. They think they're city center wells. Some of them, they think they're temples. One of them is the Sphinx. So the Sphinx has watermarks.
Yeah, water erosion lines on around its paws.
Right. That predates it. And they've been very careful to like put a date on the Sphinx.
Yeah.
So because when they found the Sphinx, it was covered to the neck.
Yeah. It was they
All
thought
right, so everybody should know that. It was right about 1900.
yeah,
It
and
was
they
covered to
really like, you know, when they're looking at that head, and you can see it to this day, when they're looking at that head, they had no clue that it was that big underneath. Because even by the standard of the head, it shouldn't have been that big.
So back to the head, it's actually way smaller than it should be in scale.
Yeah.
So they're not like altogether sure that was the original.
It doesn't look
head.
like it.
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
It looks like a 5-year-old drew a picture of a cat.
It's like if you went to Mount Rushmore and they put a smiley face on George Washington.
Yeah. Like there was another head added and it was like way smaller and just looked like some normal dude or something.
So, okay. So the reason all that is important is because, well, there's a big problem. The problem is the history of the world. If that's not true, if the lineage is not true, if the Roman Empire was maybe behind the times or fell within the thing, because that's the other thing too. Like you have Cleopatra, Mark Antony. You have all that. It's all based on this historic event. But if all of that happens because this other civilization happened, why isn't it accounted for? Now that guy with the crazy hair on the History Channel would say aliens.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think
you would say aliens immediately with unearned confidence.
Right. I think the question really is, and I say this because of somebody that bought a house that had to learn on the fly how to fix things.
Yeah.
And make things better.
Yeah.
And make things work. I bought a farmhouse. I bought a farmhouse that was built in the 1800s. I had to figure out how to make things work, figure out like how to make old technology fit new technology. So
Right.
the question is, was there another civilization
Yeah.
before what we think happened that was actually like, more advanced than we are?
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Okay. We're going to stick with that. That's the question. The question is, did somebody come along, basically like an old timer, right? And this is very easy to understand. This is very easy to understand. Because the guy that owned my property lived behind me. He owned my property. He sold it to somebody. They sold it to me. He lived behind me. He knew everything about the property.
Yeah.
Right? He also knew every technology that they put onto that property.
Yeah.
So is it possible that an ancient civilization came along and were more advanced than the civilization that investigated them?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's what we're going to go with. All right. Let's talk about some facts. All right. So here's the first thing. The first thing is that there is an overlap in technology. So things that are really kind of advanced for one generation are semi-advanced for another generation. So I'm just going to say this real quick. Septic tanks, right?
Yeah.
So like, honestly, septic tanks are kind of advanced.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Sure.
Because what you do is you take sewage water, which is flushing the toilet.
Yeah.
It goes into a tank. That tank leaches out the water. The solids get eaten by, lichens or something. Bacteria. Right. That waste goes out into your yard through a series of pea gravel, decent, big crushed limestone, and then
comes out water.
And it comes out water on the other side. That, in my opinion, is genius.
Yeah.
What you're doing, I think that's genius. I think that is genius. Because what you're doing with that is that you're reintroducing that into the environment in a self-sustaining way. That's something you can sustain for years, right? Okay. So the reason I say that is because sewage is fairly new, right? It's as far as the timeline of life. All right, but that you have to tie into the sewage, right? That has to go to a plant. It has to get processed. And then it basically is the same process, but it comes out as water on the other side. Okay, what if?
Yeah, honestly, some of the earliest attributes of like early civilizations were their ability to get rid of their own waste or bring in clean water. You know, you talk about early Romans, even ancient Peruvians, and all the way,
So when I was talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza, there's another site right next to it. It's been blocked off for all studies, but they cannot get the water out of what essentially looks like a well, right? It has these steps down, and it creates this well. And they've tried several times to drain it, because what they do, like the ground penetrating radar, they see chambers and shit, right? But when they try to drain the water, it's never ending. So it makes me wonder, like, was it made for water? You know, if it was me, and I only say this because I moved from LA, where everything, you're on a grid, right? Your water, you're like, I don't have fucking hot water. My landlord better come over, right? You're like that. To Indiana, right? Where like you're like, oh shit, I gotta handle it myself.
Yeah.
And when I started to handle it myself, honestly, it's when I like really became a man. And I mean that sincerely.
Yeah.
Because you're in charge. You're like, I don't have fucking water. Why don't I have fucking water? You know, it gets primal real quick. You know what I mean? Like, I remember the first time I went to flush my toilet and it bubbled up, and I'm like, why did that happen?
Yeah. Why is there poop in my shower?
Right. Well, that never happened to me, but it bubbled up.
Definitely happened to me, man. I got a horror story.
So I called the fucking guy, and he's like, yeah, king somewhere, dog. And I'm like, well, let's fucking get it, right? And so me and him, he has basically like, all right, think of it as a car wash end.
Yeah.
On the end of a hose, right?
But it goes buck wild.
It goes buck wild. So he's feeding that shit in there, and he's like, there's something in there. So me and him were like, oh shit, there's something in there, right? So he's like, and I didn't understand in my head, I didn't understand septic tanks.
Right.
I didn't get it. Like, it wasn't in my head. But then I realized, oh, if that doesn't clear out of the house, it doesn't go into the septic tank. And if the solids don't fall to the bottom and they're eaten by the whatever.
Yeah.
And then all the liquids go out, right? Like, everything's going to be like clogged up. So he's like, I got a clog right there. Here it is. And he hit it. And he's like, I'm through it. And he knew he was through it because it's stuck. And he's like, I'm going to pull it. And it's all coming. And I like, fucking do it, dude. He fucking pulled it. And all of a sudden, in our clean out, it was like trickling water. And all of a sudden, it was like, all hell broke loose. Like, right? Everything. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, that's what's up, dude. Nice work. Right? So we're like, but I never understood that, right? I never understood that your pipes could actually hold up your sewage to your septic tank, and then your solids can't get into your septic tank. And if your solids don't get into your septic tank, then, you know, the liquid can't go out and go down into your leach field. I never understood that.
Yeah.
Well,
and they start like, if it depends. I don't know how yours was, but mine is like, it's probably close to 100 feet or more, about 125 feet away from my house. So
that's what
I had that same clog, but they were like wanting a fortune because they have to do like.
That's what mine was. That's exactly what they did to me. They said $25,000, and I said, "Whoa, dog! Hold on.
Shut your mouth! I'll hit you."
Shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
Yeah.
And I called. I'm gonna give him a plug. I should give him a plug. Liquid Waste in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was like, he came out and he's like, no. I see what's going on. He's like, you have a clog. He's like, and the reason is the land shifted, so you don't have the exact 10 degrees that you need.
Yeah.
He knew it. He fucking knew it. He's like, you got like 9 degrees, which it should work, but he's like, if you don't flush enough, you don't use enough water. What he was saying was basically like, if one person's there and they flush and don't use enough water, it starts like the collection.
Yeah, right.
And when that happens, it builds up and whatever. Okay, so my point to all that is that's a crazy technology, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's a crazy technology.
We've judged many a civilization by their waste management, honestly.
Absolutely. And this is something
all the way
that
back
happens
to I think the earliest civilization that we attribute is Mesopotamians, and they had clay sewer pipes back in 4000 BCE. So
this happens on your property. The Mesopotamians were doing it on a city level.
Yeah.
New York, there's several generations, and like guys that work underground will tell you there's several generations of sewage.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole entire Mario Brothers, like, whole entire thing.
It's kind of crazy how much is underneath New York.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's like hundreds of feet underground.
Yeah.
But Mario Brothers, that whole entire story or game or whatever was based on the different levels of sewage and pipes and things below ground.
Yeah.
In New York City. This is a thing. We're talking about right now is sewage.
Right.
Here's what's crazy. The pyramids were like power generators.
That's
what they're really saying now. That is like a primary theory, is that all pyramids, all of them, all over the country,
all over the world.
They're all over the world.
Yeah.
They're all power.
Yeah,
and
it's a working theory right now. It's kind of crazy that
it is a working theory. It is, but they've discovered
theory right now. I mean,
but they've discovered things like, on smaller models, if you have limestone and certain things like the Baghdad battery, you can make power out of a pyramid.
Yeah, and there's nothing to say that technology that was like way advanced for its time died off and got lost and reborn, because you can think of examples in history where like things were invented, like when they the phone or the light bulb were invented, people were like, what the fuck am I going to do with that?
Our brother-in-law literally said, why do I need a computer?
Underwhelmed by those things.
Our brother-in-law literally said, why do I need a computer?
Yeah.
And he's a fairly smart guy.
Yeah.
And we're like, you're a dummy.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we can stop
now,
for a second.
Now the question is, though,
right, exactly.
Is it that there was an advanced civilization that was, from what we're saying that right now, what you're saying right now is very, very close on the timeline, right? They would be like just behind Egyptians.
Right.
But there's also a case to be made based on, I don't know if you've heard about it, the Silurian hypothesis.
What is that?
Okay, so and this is going to sound crazy, but I've never watched the show Doctor Who. Ever. Like,
Okay.
none of them. There's like been, that show's run from it was like in the 70s to the 80s, and then came back in like '05 and blah, blah, blah. And it's just been all over the place, right? And it's a super popular show. And in the show, there was they go back in time, and there was a civilization that predated everybody. And they were called the Silurians.
Okay.
And they were like a reptile species.
Yeah.
Right? That lived like long before everybody. And they were an advanced civilization, and they no longer exist. And this hypothesis was actually come up by two astrophysicists named Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt. They called it that because they were Doctor Who fans.
Okay.
But their hypothesis is was it possible, and they don't believe that it happened. They're just stating, is it possible that there was a industrialized civilization and that maybe lived in the Carboniferous period, which would have been 350 million years ago. That would predate dinosaurs.
So
that's
what this whole story.
The Carboniferous literally means coal bearing, because there were so many coal deposits, and we know what that means. If with coal you can do lots of things. You can have an industrial revolution just based off coal and oil. So the idea is it possible? And what they would here's how you find out. This is kind of the cool part, is where how you would know without having fossil records, because they said fossilization, and this is kind of crazy too. Fossilization's super rare. Mm-hmm. Right? We can think about it and we're like, what are you talking about? We found all these fossils. There's fossils everywhere. We got all these
Oh, you mean the actual, what it takes to make that?
Well, just in overall of all life that's ever existed, there's so much life that has existed for such a long period of time that the fossils that we found, that's it out of all that. So if you're saying like it's rare, but if there's so many organisms that's lived throughout time, that even being rare, you would get a lot. You know what I mean? There's been they say 99.9% of all species are extinct that's ever lived on the planet. So like the number's so large of examples of, terrestrial life, that the amount of fossils that we have is a teeny tiny speck compared to what's existed throughout time.
The other thing is,
so fossilization's a rare event. It doesn't. You have to have these perfect conditions for it to happen. And dinosaurs were around for like 145 million years. So there's not a lot of fossils compared to how long they were around. You get what I'm saying? So, and not every time period's perfect for fossilization. So you could have this advanced civilization that occurred 350 million years ago and not have any fossil records of it.
Okay.
There's very little surface area on the Earth.
Absolutely. The other thing is, maybe their trajectory for technology wasn't the same as ours.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it didn't go from fire to the engine to the car to the... Right?
Yeah, and the test for what I was going to say was to test to see if you go through the fossil records, they can find signs of like nuclear waste.
So there is a nuclear reactor Have you seen this?
Mm-mm.
So, there is a nuclear reactor. Let me just see real quick. Mario, you want to help me real quick? Let's do ancient nuclear reactor. The point is that there are like the Costa Rican spheres.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is one of those things. Nobody knows why they're there. They are there. They exist. Nobody understands why they're separated where they were. Easter Island. Like, it was thought before that they killed all the trees. And that's why. They also thought they were just heads. But then they found out a lot of them have bodies. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the point is that we only know a portion of history.
Yeah.
And I can't help to think that when civilization starts to make giant strides, they get put back into the Stone Age. And then they make the strides and they get pushed back. For whatever reason, whether it's political or physical or weather or whatever. But there is a
Are you talking about there was like a natural fission reactor in like Gabon?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Oklo Gabon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was active for like 2 billion years.
Right.
Didn't it say something there that's like it's since decayed
Yes.
to a longer lived or
Yes.
that's crazy, right?
Right? But like what they were saying about and so the only reason I even say about the and I don't even know this for fact because I'm not a heavy machinery operator. But what they were saying about Joe Rogan, basically, the movement of stones for the Pyramid of Giza,
Mm-hmm.
which is the oldest pyramid. But the reason that this is so fucked is because it's also the most accurate pyramid. Of all the pyramids,
Mm-hmm.
Giza, the Pyramid of Giza, is the most directionally accurate to the stars. It has the squarest perimeter. It has the biggest stones. So when he was talking about making that work, just making that work, period.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, that's really hard to do right now. He's like, even if we had all the world's technology to do that right now,
Mm-hmm.
and to do it in 20 years is really. And I looked it up because I'm like, challenge, whatever. And no, he's right. He's 100% right. Machinery, what you would need to do that, you would have to build a ramp. Like, it's you can't just crane it up because the stones themselves are so heavy. Plus, they came from like 200 miles away. Okay, fine, all that, right? Fine, they built the pyramid. All right, the Sphinx. They think the Sphinx is 100,000 years older than the pyramid.
Right.
which is crazy. And the reason they think that is because of the water lines with the ice age, and they could tell when there was water to that climate, to that region, and they could tell by the stones where it is. All right, that's nuts. All right, so then, all right, cool. All that's fine. All right, all that's cool. But then when we actually discover it, it's under sand. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we take it away, and then we start to study it. Yeah, so like the whole thing is, yeah, we're not saying they had cell phones and iPads, right? We're not saying that. But what we're saying is there were several runs at humanity that made several leaps in technology only to be put back.
Yeah, either regressed or
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Whether it's plague, war, whatever.
Inability to get the word out.
Absolutely. All right, so that's what we're talking about. All right, so let's get into what we think. All right. I'm gonna go first. So here's what I think. And I've thought this a lot. I think you have geniuses all the time. And they come, okay, all right, real quick. I'm going to tell you a story. My dad was in the Marine Corps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's on watch with a guy from West Virginia who, my dad's in college. He gets called to the Marine Corps, so my dad thinks he's smart, right? He's with a hillbilly from West Virginia. And he's like, this guy's a dummy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the same rank, but he's like, this guy's a dummy. And this general was supposed to fly in and meet everybody, right? Their captain puts everybody out on the field to welcome him as he comes in on this plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this guy from West Virginia is like, hey, Dan, you know what's stupid about this? One bomb would take out this entire unit. Right? And my dad's like, haha, whatever. He laughs. Well, what happens is fucking the Marine Corps guy flies in, lands, he salutes, and he fucking yells at him. That guy turns around, walks away. He gets in his plane, takes off. He's like, the next day, he was relieved of duty. And he's like, he was fucking right. He's like, he was fucking right. He's like, if anybody was watching, that guy could, like, one bomb, he's right. Like, he brought this whole show of, like, you know, militarism. He brought this whole thing out there. And this guy from West Virginia, who's like probably didn't graduate high school.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's dumb, man.
Yeah.
But dude, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the point of that is that
you never know who's going to come along and say
we
something
have
simply genius.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Learning, like, trial by error is a thing, and you learn things. And when I was talking about having a house in the country and learning things, you learn things. You just do.
Mm-hmm.
you learn how to do things. Like, I remember I was splitting wood. I had a wood burner. I was splitting. I had this big, huge fucking axe. Bam. Bam. This guy's like, oh, goddamn, dude. Is that how you fucking split your firewood? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, he gave me this thing called the Chopper USA. It's like an axe, but it has these two spring-loaded things that go in the opposite direction of the axe. Literally, you take one hand and you hit the top of the wood, and you get three pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom, boom. Right? Okay, dude, that's fucking crazy. Right? I used to hit the shit out of wood for hours. And he's like, God damn it, dude. Watch, do this. I did it. Boom, boom, boom. So, like, it's feasible to me that there were all these ancient technologies that did all kinds of stuff. Probably illuminated cities with batteries and figured out how to power entire cities and counties and figured out how to get water to everybody and whatever. And what happened was it gets political.
Or you just didn't have the ability to protect yourself against a savage group that didn't understand
That's what it is.
technology and kill off all your people.
It gets political. In some case, somebody either is like, fuck those guys, they practice witchcraft.
Yeah.
Or they're like, we want to take over.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
So.
They're like, we want to take over. And then they take over, and they don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And then they get taken over by somebody, and then all that shit is lost.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably what happened. And when we talk about, like, the Egyptians specifically, when they have these things that are like, you know, what they think are hundreds of thousands of years older than the Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
And the reason they think that is because there's no hieroglyphics. And the reason they think that is because what is recorded is that when the Egyptians came across something or did something, they would put their signature on it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Well, back to the Joe Rogan. What if they just stumbled on it and they're like, we did this?
Right, and it was an actual like power source, and they
absolutely.
And they put coffins in it.
Absolutely right. It's not even made from what it is, and that to me is a total human thing. So yeah, I think what happened is probably a necessary evolution of human history. That things start to happen, they get set back. They start to happen, they get set back. And it's, I guess like the easiest way is like nuclear energy. Like nuclear energy on the surface, solid. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, dude. Infinite energy for everybody. Right? But then when you get into like the crux of it, problems. Like problems,
yeah.
right? But however, if you can fix those problems, infinite energy for everybody, right?
Right.
So like, I think that's kind of what it is. Not so much on the nuclear level, but more so the technology level. Is like, there's these great strides, and whether it's war or famine or whatever, that stops, and then another generation comes along, and they try to pick up, but they can't pick up because they weren't part of the evolution, you know. And I've noticed this from my house when I've rented it to people. They just, it's hard to explain, but they don't know the house, right? It's this big, huge organism they don't know. So, yeah, I think it's totally possible that there's these crazy technologies out there that they were probably on the brink of having an automobile, but they couldn't because of war or disease or circumstance, whether it's weather or whatever.
Right.
And then it fell by the wayside. And when it did, another civilization came on and they started from zero. So, yeah, I think if there are ancient technologies, either one of two things. They already did it, or it's just a series of blunders.
All right.
Right.
So I believe that you're correct that there's a very good chance that prior to what we think are the oldest civilizations, there were other civilizations that came and died out and left certain things behind that we didn't understand, and they repurposed to do other things with. But I also believe in the opportunity that throughout the history of the planet, there may have been civilizations that grew extremely advanced, even far, far more advanced than we are now, and died off also, and we wouldn't have any proof of it. You got to figure the planet's like, what, fucking 4 billion years old?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Lots of stuff could have happened over that time. And like I was saying about that cerulean theory that they had, that Carboniferous period, there's the first 15 million years of it. It's called Romer's Gap. They have no fossil records from the first 15 million years of that period. So, and like there's proof of like a geological event where the oxygen levels plummeted, and so there there was tons of life that was just, we've had like 5 extinction level events that we know of that have killed off a vast majority of the life on the planet. That's happened like 5 fucking times. So there definitely could have been some advanced life form, and that lived well before the dinosaurs even. And like I said, in that time period would be more likely if there was an advanced civilization that lived at the end of that time period, but not the beginning. But it just kind of proves that like they know that time period existed. They can see it in the geology, but they can't find fossil records of it.
So right in the middle of LA
mm-hmm.
is the La Brea tar pits.
Right.
The only reason they do not put humans in that period is because they have not found a human next to a saber-toothed tiger or a woolly mammoth. That's it. That's it. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So, and there's like, because you go through and think about our earliest civilizations, or even if you were talking about Homo sapiens themselves, from the beginning of Homo sapien to where we're at now, isn't that long in the grand scheme of things.
So I just asked Mario while you were talking, the oldest recorded civilization. He said the Sumerians in 4000 BC. Right, and now it can be argued because there's other groups that exist like Aboriginal Australia. Right, and he did
are genetically different from everybody else on the planet. By the way,
to be fair, he put an asterisk next to that
because there's also the Sands people in Africa that have been around for 140,000 years.
Right.
So, but still, that's a relatively short amount of time to get where we're at now, where we're traveling through space. So to think that in that short a period of time, in a planet that's 4 billion years old, that whole structure couldn't have happened multiple
All right.
times.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah.
What if that's not your goal?
What do you mean?
Traveling through space.
Right. It
Right?
could not be. It could be exploring the bottom of the ocean.
It's like my house in Indiana. Maybe the goal is just to like have your, sewage like
Yeah.
assimilate into your yard.
Yeah. But my
Which
point
is
is
crazy.
for all we know, they just took off into space and never came back. You know what I mean?
that is true.
They might
That's
have picked up
absolutely
shop
true.
because, like I said, there was 5 extinction level events that we know occurred, and we know during that one of them happened during that period that I was talking about in the Carboniferous age. It also had a that was when Pangea formed.
So Mario's father-in-law, very smart guy.
Mhm.
He's the one that gave me that book, The Lost Star. He said, in my opinion, maybe they're just people from here in the future. That's what UFOs are.
The aliens,
And I said,
yes.
it makes a lot of sense. Because
Yeah,
it does.
if they advance beyond like even needing to mate, even like they, you know what I mean, and they come and get organic material and samples so they can recreate more of them. That's been theorized too.
Or it's like Flight of the Navigator.
Yeah.
You fly away fast enough, and when you come back, it's 200 years later, right?
Yeah. Yep. And that's what I said. The problem
You're a couple days older. There, everybody else is, and every technology. So yeah, I get that.
yeah, because we've talked about this in some of our other episodes where it's like where I brought up that seeing aliens or having aliens visit, and then people are like, well, why would they come and then not show up again? And it's like because time might affect them differently. And they might have went home and now they're like either frozen in time compared to us, or they're going astronomically faster in time than us. So if they came back, it would be hundreds of thousands of years later, but to them it would only have been a couple years, So time affects everything different out in space, which is weird to think about and kind of breaks my brain a little bit.
A little bit.
But my point is that we accomplished quite a bit in a very short amount of historic time.
We did.
And to think that only happened once seems crazy to me.
It also seems crazy that there were these giant giant leaps in technology.
Yeah.
And that always fucked me up. Like, okay, just like I said, at my house, in 11 years, I became a master of that property, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair, right? Fair.
Yeah.
Why not when you have, and I'm feeble compared to what the government has, right?
Yeah.
I'm that guy that eats the uranium oatmeal.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, but you have the best scientists, and they have all the parameters. Why don't they make giant leaps? And I know what you're gonna say. They have, absolutely. Okay, fair. Okay, they have made giant leaps, but maybe it was just because they made giant leaps to do different things. Like the reason we made giant leaps in nuclear weapons was because there was a Cold War. Like the reason we made giant leaps in like warfare was because there was world wars, right? Mm-hmm. But if that wasn't the case, maybe we were trying to power the planet. Maybe We were trying to feed everybody. Maybe at one time, and I know it's not recorded.
Maybe that natural fission reaction wasn't so natural.
Absolutely. Maybe there's a reason for everything that happened. So, all right.
Because like and too, like the geological events that have happened on this planet, like I was saying during that period that I was talking about, that was when Pangea was formed. All the continents came together and collided and created Pangea, one big supercontinent. And if you think about it, there's pyramids all over the planet, like we said. But when you take all the continents and you squeeze them back together in the shapes they go into, because, like Brazil and like South America kind of fits into Africa, and you kind of squash them all together, all of a sudden those pyramids are pretty fucking close to each other.
All right.
So it would.
What do you think?
It would indicate that some of those pyramids could have been built during the time of Pangea. Like, that's how they knew about each other.
Absolutely.
So that's really, really fucking old. That's older than dinosaurs.
Absolutely.
So, and it's like, if it's a structure that could survive that long because of whatever climate conditions helped it out, then that would be like the only remnants left, maybe, and maybe it was way more advanced than that before what it looks like right now. It could have had a metal surface that was, electronically charged, and who knows?
What we know is that the Egyptian pyramids had a limestone surface that was charged.
Yeah.
And they have proven it. They've proven it in smaller scale models where it has a positive charge and will light a light bulb. Holy shit! Right. All right. So this is the rare opportunity. We're gonna go to our researcher, right? So I'm gonna ask Mario. Real quick. Because here's why. I think you and I are on the same page. Yeah. What we're saying is that, there's technology. It may not be, like the Blackbird out of Area 51.
Right.
All right. But it definitely is society based that benefits the good of everybody. And, I think in this particular case, this is something we should ask somebody that's like, has no investment. Mario doesn't have any investment. His whole thing is he gives us information on how old things are, like whatever. But I think you and I are in such agreement on this one. Mario, what do you think?
I tend to agree with both of you. I think there's, as far as what they classify as a civilization, maybe not that many before the Sumerians, but I think humans just traveled in smaller groups, and I think they became more advanced. And then, just like you said, savages roll in and you lose everything, or a major event happens with weather or something, and you lose all that technology and you lose those everything on the way.
Absolutely.
And the ones that do make it, those are those rare archaeological digs that we are finding. Anyone who sticks to some sort of timeline is proven wrong, like within a couple years nowadays, I feel like. So
I agree.
I think there has to be civilizations that had, maybe, like you said, not quite the same types of technologies, but things that are more advanced than what we have today.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, I think I'm a little bit more extreme than the both of you. I think that, like, it's totally plausible that we had, like, super advanced civilizations that are no longer here. Like, super advanced.
I'm actually with that because of that book that Mario was talking about. I'm with you.
They could have been like a whole different group of not even, Homo sapien, not even along our same lines. It could have been you know, I don't want to get like reptile people and shit like that, but it could have been genetically so different from us that it wouldn't be recognizable as the same thing. Like we were saying, like aliens might be from our past and jumping into the future or whatever. They what if that's how they developed the look, like the grays with the big almond eyes and stuff like that? They could have lived on Antarctica before a pole shift, and that catastrophic event wiped them out completely, and all evidence of them's buried under miles of snow.
Well, we talked about the walking with the
It's all whites.
that was the whole thing about that was that guy said they've always been here.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, so here's the problem. Like, and this is probably the human part of it. He was so traumatized. Right? I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
He was so traumatized that it took him years to like reveal that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've always been like enamored with Bob Lazar. Because Bob Lazar never said, he never gave you an exact. And in my opinion, when somebody doesn't give you an exact, it's really hard to disbelieve that person. Because he was like, I don't know if they gave me that information, that they're from Zeta Reticuli to fuck with me or track me, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was like,
Yeah,
I
the
thought
whole
they were just
email chain thing.
Yeah, he's like, I thought they gave me that to like see how much I can remember. And when he said that, I'm like, yeah, that's, if I was in charge of the government, that's what I would do. I would throw a shit ton of information at somebody.
Yeah.
And say, how much did you remember? And give it back to me. Right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd be like, all right, this guy's solid. Right?
Yeah.
And then when he was like, the other part of that, when he was like, oh, it's ridiculous that it's like me and another guy. It's like I know what's going on in science. He's like, but it's ridiculous that like me and another guy are trying to fix everything. He's like, why don't we have a team of people?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
It seems like a big deal.
It seems like a big, but I remember what you said. You said something very like human. You said, well, if we have the technology, you don't want to give that technology out. And I said, that makes a lot of sense. Like, you can't just outsource everything and be like, hey, we got this flying saucer, you guys.
And then everybody's going to want a flying saucer.
Right. And it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And so I think even back to like the Sphinx, you know, people realize that. And they're like, if we start telling people that, you know, we know how to do stuff, and then people get a hold of it, we have to hold that technology back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they know we got a super high speed tunnel, they're going to want a super high speed tunnel everywhere.
If they know that we can build Sphinxes,
yeah, everybody's going to want one.
Everybody's going to want one.
Yeah, and what's cool about that theory that I was talking about was that it actually got them to where it's like people are going to search for these things, these clues, these markers,
right?
Isotopes and shit like that in the soils and tree rings and
absolutely,
you know what I mean, in ice core samples, and because they said there's no naturally occurring plutonium-244 outside of a supernova.
Right.
So if they find evidence of the isotopes from that, then that it could point directly to advanced technology from a civilization.
Crazy.
Yeah. So even if without a fossil record, these certain things wouldn't occur naturally. So if you find them, that's human activity.
So let's just go like
And
crazy.
if we believe everything that they're saying about human activity and how it affects the planet and the climate, they can spot and pinpoint all these different climate changes that's happened through time.
So
where
let's just say real quick. Let's just say we have a mini nuclear war.
Mhm.
A bunch of people go underground, right?
Yeah.
The teachers die off, and the actual event never happens. So like all the people that should know died and never taught it to the younger generation. Okay.
Mhm.
Listen, they all live underground. They're self-sustaining because they set it up and all that shit. All right. Then they're like, why are we living underground? Right?
Right.
They go up to the ground. They're like, oh, we can live up here.
Yeah, it's like Fallout.
And they get up there. And then they're like, well, what is this? And they're Fukushima.
Yeah.
Right? And Fukushima at that point, it's died out. So they're like, oh, that's weird. All these crazy ruins, right?
Right.
Isn't that the same exact thing as the pyramids?
Yeah, and it's like if you think about it like I was just saying, like Fallout. So
Absolutely.
You had this where they got to a point where they were like super technologically advanced, and they built these vaults, right? And they had like all these, but they were kind of like based in that time era, like the 50s and stuff,
right?
And it all kind of revolved around that. But when they come out of the vault and go up top, when like like if you watch the show, I've played the games and stuff, but if you watch the show and the chick goes up to the surface, she like de-evolves.
Yeah, right.
Right? She goes back to primal.
Right.
She starts learning how to defend herself like properly, you know what I mean? Use weapons and it's
then
like kill or be killed. Because like we were saying, there's like the savage group lives up top and the civilized group lives underground. But when they go back up, they regress instead of bringing the other people forward.
It makes me wonder, like, what the next...
And I think that's like the most human thing. Like,
right, what's the next generation? Like, if everything does come to a head, there is a nuclear war, or there's a war that forces everybody underground, or there's a war that kills everybody, or whatever.
Yeah.
The next step, then what?
Yeah, they found those caves that were hand dug. They were like
absolutely
big open caverns in China that were like hand carved out underground that are really, really, really old. Like people were trying to live underground. And I had brought that up before about, if there was like an ice age or some like an extinction level event, whether it was heat or cold or whatever, and they moved underground to get away from it. When they came back up, they de-evolved.
Dude, they found a cave in China that was a giant mole. It was a giant mole that carved its way there and created these tunnels. The tunnels are crazy. They're like 10 foot tall. And it's a mole.
Yeah.
Right. So like, yeah, absolutely. Like it could be an animal, it could be like a technology, it could be whatever. But the point is that knowledge is lost.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was saying with the Fallout thing. That's like you could have all this technology and bury yourself underground with it, and it's all advanced and you're living this, but you're not really advancing the technology any further because you don't have the resources to do it. You only have what you took down there with you.
Absolutely.
And then but even though it was advanced and you stay that kind of advanced civilization, when something catastrophic happens, like happened in the show where they come in and they, the people kill them, just like we said, the savage tough group that's dumber than you could destroy you. And
absolutely.
They come in and destroy them, and when she goes out, it's not like she goes out and everybody starts coming up to speed to her. she
Right.
like de-evolved down to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and that's completely could have been the recent cycles, like we were talking about with like the ancient Egyptians and stuff, where the ancient Egyptians were kind of the people coming out of the hole, and they're looking at this technology and going, I don't know what the fuck this is for. Write some shit on it. Hey, write your name on it.
We invented this.
Yeah, write your name on it and say you did it.
All right, so I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, I think ancient civilizations definitely existed.
Ancient civilizations definitely existed. They definitely had technology. It was just lost with time.
Yeah.
And probably due to war or famine or whatever.
Yeah, and I believe that even further back through time, far more advanced civilizations have lived and died and left and stayed and changed and were lost.
Like
happen.
Joe Rogan said, the Egyptians rolled up and said, we built these.
Yeah, it's kind of like the theory. It's kind of like the thing where they say, like, how many stars there are in space and how many of them could have a Earth-like planet or habitable planet revolved around them. And when you start breaking down the numbers and you're like, well, it's this many billions of billions, then it's like to think that none of them got to our point is just like absurd.
Right.
So to think that our planet being 4 billion years old or whatever the hell it is, and us only coming from about 300,000 years ago to where we're at now, that couldn't have happened over the billions of lifetimes, years that this planet's been in existence and habitable, especially when they talk about that period that I was talking about, where it completely could have sustained a civilization of people because of the resources were available. The oxygen levels were good, the resources were fine, but there was extinction events. So if something did advance, become, an advanced civilization, it could have got completely wiped out by an extinction level event. A meteor, an ice age, a pole shift, anything like that.
All right, so the question is, was there more advanced civilization that was just smoked out because of circumstances? And, is that the reason, the car wasn't invented 5,000 years ago?
Right.
And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And I think you do
too. I'm with it too. Like I said, I keep the door open for the possibility even further back and more advanced. So yeah. Definitely.
Mario?
I agree.
Yeah.
There's even sign. I saw things. Just to hit this real quick. There was even talk when I was looking this stuff up of terrestrial activity on the moon and Mars prior to us going to them, as if like some ancient civilization from way long ago traveled out to the moon or Mars, and they did activity there, like whatever it was, and there's like remnants of them doing this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense because, Earth.
And if they thought the world was ending and they had the technology to do it, why wouldn't they evacuate the planet?
Earth history is millions, and solar system history is billions. So, it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're all in agreement.
Yep.
Ancient technology existed. It was probably on pace to be current technology, but for whatever reason, it got stopped, whether it was war, disease, or whatever. But they definitely have the knowledge, right?
Yep.
That's what I think. All right. You good with that?
I'm good with that.
Mario, you good with that?
Yep.
We solved all the history of the planet.
We did. We solved the history of the planet. All right, I'm Anthony.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Mario.
And this is Everything That's Weird. For show notes and merchandise, go to www.everythingthat'sweird.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to like, subscribe, and review anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. See you next time.